Last night, you checked your phone one last time, turned off the light, closed your eyes. You told yourself, tomorrow will be better. 5 minutes later, your mind started asking questions you never wanted to answer. What if I lose my job? What if the doctor calls tomorrow with bad news? What if my son never comes back? What if my daughter stops believing? What if God never answers this prayer? Nothing had happened. No phone call, no bad news, no emergency. Yet your heart was beating, as if the worst had already arrived. You turned over, looked at the clock, closed your eyes again, tried to pray, but every prayer was interrupted by another fearful thought. By morning, nothing around you had changed. Your bills were the same. Your family was the same. Your future was still unknown. Only one thing had changed. Your mind had exhausted you. Maybe that's exactly where you are today. Not because life is falling apart, but because your thoughts keep telling you that it will. People around you don't see this battle. They see you smiling, going to work, driving your children, attending church, laughing at dinner. They think you're doing fine, but they don't hear the conversations inside your head. They don't know how many times you've imagined tomorrow ending in disaster, how many times you've replayed the same mistake, how many nights you've whispered, "Lord, I can't keep living like this." Maybe you've even started questioning yourself. Why can't I stop thinking? Why can't I just trust God? What's wrong with me? Then comes the guilt. Maybe my faith isn't strong enough. Maybe a real Christian wouldn't struggle like this. So you stop talking about it. You carry the battle alone because you're afraid people won't understand. But listen carefully. What you're fighting today isn't unusual, and it isn't invisible to God. He was there last night when nobody else knew you were awake. He saw every anxious thought, every tear, every prayer that ended before you could even finish it. Because today, before He speaks to your future, He wants to speak to your mind. Because the greatest battlefield in your life is rarely the world around you. It's the world inside you. And if that's where the battle begins, that's exactly where God wants to begin His healing. The hardest part isn't that those thoughts appear. The hardest part is that they sound like you. They don't feel like lies. They feel reasonable. They feel responsible. They even feel wise. You tell yourself, "I'm just preparing for the worst. I'm just being careful. I'm just thinking ahead." But little by little, preparing becomes worrying. Worrying becomes fear. Fear becomes the voice you listen to more than anyone else's, including mine. Have you noticed how quickly your mind believes bad news and how slowly it believes good news? One compliment, and you forget it before lunch. One criticism, and you remember it for 6 months. Someone tells you you did a great job. You smile, but 1 hour later, all you can think about is the one mistake you made. Why? Because fear has trained your mind to search for danger, even when danger isn't there. Think about how many times you've done this. Your phone rings late at night. Immediately, your stomach tightens. Someone says, "We need to talk." Your heart starts racing. You send a message. 5 minutes pass. No reply. Your mind immediately finishes the story. They're upset. Something is wrong. I must have done something. Then an hour later, they reply, "Sorry, I was driving." Nothing bad happened, except your peace disappeared. Not because of reality, because of the story your mind created. And here's the frightening part. The more often you believe those stories, the easier they become to believe. Until one day, fear no longer has to knock. You open the door for it, without realizing it. Maybe you've been doing that for years. You wake up, already expecting bad news. You pray, but secretly expect disappointment. You hope while preparing yourself to be hurt again, not because you want to, because your mind has learned to survive by expecting the worst. But survival is not the same as peace. Listen carefully. Fear has one goal: to make tomorrow feel bigger than God. It keeps showing you pictures of everything that could go wrong. It never shows you everything God could make right. Fear always asks, what if everything falls apart? Faith quietly asks, what if God is already working? Fear says, you're alone. God says, I have never left you. Fear says, you won't make it. God says, my grace is sufficient for you. Fear says, you need to figure everything out today. God says, trust me with today. I'll take care of tomorrow. Do you see the difference? One voice drains your strength. The other gives you peace. One voice pushes you into panic. The other invites you into trust. One voice gets louder the more you listen. So does the other. Because whatever voice you feed becomes the loudest voice in your life. Maybe that's why you're exhausted. Not because you've been listening to fear once, but because you've been listening to it every day without realizing it. And after hearing the same fearful message 1,000 times, you began believing it was the truth. But today, God wants to interrupt that conversation, not by shouting over your fear, but by speaking something stronger than your fear. Because not every thought deserves your agreement. Not every fear deserves your attention. Not every voice deserves your trust. Stay with me, because in the next part, I'm going to reveal something that changed the lives of countless believers. How do you know whether a thought comes from fear or from God? Once you learn the answer, you'll never listen to your own thoughts the same way again. Stay with me, because this may be the most important thing you'll hear today. What if I told you that not every thought in your mind deserves your trust? Think about that. You question emails, you question news articles, you question strangers. But when a thought appears in your own mind, you rarely question it. You simply believe it. I'm going to fail. Nobody really loves me. God must be disappointed in me. Nothing will ever change. I'll always be like this. Have you ever stopped and asked, who told me that? Not where it came from, not why you thought it, but who told you it was true? Because every day, your mind is flooded with thousands of thoughts. Some are true, some are helpful, some are completely false. Yet your heart reacts to all of them as if they carry the same authority. They don't. Imagine someone slipping a fake check into your mailbox. It looks real. It feels real. It even has your name on it. But if it's counterfeit, its appearance doesn't change its value. It is still false, my child. Fear works the same way. It dresses lies to look like truth. It whispers, you're just being realistic. No, you're rehearsing fear. It whispers, you're protecting yourself. No, you're imprisoning yourself. It whispers, if you expect the worst, you won't be disappointed. But that's exactly what fear wants, to make you suffer for tragedies that may never happen. How many times have you lived through tomorrow's pain before tomorrow even arrived? How many sleepless nights were spent fighting battles that never actually happened? How many joyful moments did fear quietly steal because your mind refused to stay in the present? My child, fear has robbed enough from you. Now listen carefully. This is where everything begins to change, because my voice does not sound like fear. Fear shouts, I guide. Fear rushes, I lead. Fear condemns, I correct. Fear tells you there is no hope. I tell you, with me there is always hope. Fear says, you have to carry this alone. I say, cast all your cares upon me, because I care for you. Fear keeps talking, even after you've prayed. My peace begins when you finally choose to believe me more than your fears. Please hear my word, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Notice what I did not say. I did not promise that fearful thoughts would never come. I promised that fear was never meant to rule you. You don't have to obey every thought that enters your mind. You don't have to entertain every fear that knocks on your door. You don't have to build your future around your worst imagination, because a thought is not a prophecy. A feeling is not a fact. Fear is not my voice. My child, you have spent too much of your life interrogating my promises while accepting fear's lies without question. Starting today, reverse that. Question the fear, not my faithfulness. When fear says, you're alone, ask, is that what God says? When fear says, nothing will ever change, ask, is that what God promised? When fear says, you're not enough, remember, I have never asked you to be enough without me. The enemy wants your attention. I want your trust. The enemy wants to fill your mind with endless possibilities of disaster. I want to fill your heart with the certainty of my presence. That is the battle. Not whether fearful thoughts appear, but whether they become the voice you follow. My child, from this moment forward, I want you to stop asking, why am I thinking this? Instead ask, does this thought sound like my Father? Because if it doesn't sound like me, it doesn't deserve to lead you. Stay with me, because in the next part, I'm going to show you something practical. Not just how to recognize my voice, but how to quiet the noise that has been stealing your peace for so long. Maybe right now, you're asking one question. If those thoughts aren't from God, how do I stop them? Because you've tried. You've told yourself, stop worrying. It didn't work. You tried distracting yourself, watching television, scrolling through your phone, keeping yourself busy. For a little while, the thoughts became quieter. Then the room became silent again, and they came back, stronger than before. Maybe you've even prayed, Lord, please take these thoughts away. Then 10 minutes later, they returned, and you wondered, why didn't my prayer work? My child, listen carefully. I never told you to empty your mind. I told you to fill it. There is a difference. Imagine walking into a dark room. You don't fight the darkness. You don't argue with it. You don't push it out. You turn on the light. The light does what your strength never could. Your mind works the same way. If you only try to stop fearful thoughts, fear will always return, because an empty mind always searches for something to fill it. So today, don't only remove fear, replace it. Replace panic with my promises. Replace lies with truth. Replace what if with even if. Instead of asking, what if everything goes wrong, begin asking, even if things become difficult, will God still be with me? Yes. Even if I lose this opportunity, will God still provide? Yes. Even if this prayer takes longer than I expected, is God still faithful? Yes. Do you see what just happened? Your circumstances didn't change, but the direction of your mind did. That is where peace begins. Please hear what my word says. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Notice, I did not say, be transformed by trying harder, or be transformed by worrying less. Transformation begins when your mind begins believing what I say more than what fear says. My child, for years you have allowed fear to be the first voice you hear every morning. Before you even get out of bed, your mind starts checking problems, checking bills, checking worst-case scenarios, checking tomorrow. What if, before touching your phone, you spoke to me first? What if, before reading the news, you remembered my promises? What if, before listening to fear, you listened to truth? Would every anxious thought disappear overnight? No, but something else would happen. Your heart would stop believing that fear deserves the final word. Please understand, peace isn't the absence of problems. Peace is the confidence that I am greater than your problems. Think about Peter. The storm didn't disappear. The waves didn't stop. The wind didn't suddenly become calm. The miracle happened when Peter changed where he was looking. As long as his eyes remained on me, he walked. The moment fear became louder than my presence, he began to sink. My child, many of you are trying to calm the storm when I am inviting you to look at me, because your peace has never depended on a perfect life. It has always depended on my presence. Starting today, I want you to practice something simple. Whenever fear speaks, don't immediately believe it. Pause. Ask one question. Would my father speak to me like this? If the answer is no, don't build your day around that thought. Bring it to me. Give it to me. Replace it with something I have already spoken, because my promises are stronger than your panic. My truth is greater than your imagination. My peace is deeper than your anxiety. Stay with me, because in the final part, I want to leave you with one promise that I hope you'll remember every time fear tries to speak again. Because, my child, your mind does not belong to fear, it belongs to me. Before this message ends, I want to ask you something. A year from now, will the thoughts that are stealing your peace today still matter? Some of them will, many of them won't. Think about all the things you worried about 5 years ago. The phone call you feared, the interview, the financial pressure, the relationship, the mistake you couldn't stop replaying. How many of those fears actually happened? And of the ones that did, how many did you survive? Because I was already there before you arrived. My child, you've spent so much of your life trying to predict tomorrow, while I have been trying to teach you to trust me today. Fear always lives in tomorrow. Regret always lives in yesterday. But I have always met my children in today. That is why I said, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I wasn't telling you to ignore your responsibilities. I was inviting you to stop carrying a future you were never created to control. Listen carefully. There will always be another reason to worry, another bill, another doctor's appointment, another difficult conversation, another uncertainty. If your peace depends on life becoming predictable, you will spend your entire life waiting. But if your peace depends on me, then no circumstance has the authority to steal it from you. Because I do not change, your circumstances will, people will, the economy will, your health may, your plans certainly will, but I remain the same, yesterday, today, forever. That is why my peace is stronger than your fear. My child, you have believed for too long that the goal is to never have another anxious thought. That isn't the goal. The goal is to stop allowing fear to become your teacher. Let me become your teacher. Let my word become louder than your worries. Let my promises become more familiar than your fears. Every morning, you have a choice. Which voice will you feed first? The news, social media, your imagination, or me? Because the voice you listen to most will shape the life you live. Please remember this. When fear says, "You're alone," remember, "I am with you." When fear says, "You're not enough," remember, "My grace is enough." When fear says, "Everything is falling apart," remember, "I am still holding everything together." When fear says, "You'll never have peace," remember, "My peace is not something you earn, it is something I give." My child, tonight, when you lie down, those thoughts may come back. If they do, don't panic. Don't condemn yourself. Don't believe you've failed. Simply remember, you no longer have to believe everything your mind says. Instead, come back to my voice, again and again and again, because every time you choose truth over fear, your mind is being renewed. Every time you choose my promise over your panic, your faith grows stronger. Every time you choose my presence instead of your imagination, fear loses another piece of ground. One day, you will realize that the battle which once controlled your life no longer controls your heart, not because you became stronger, but because you learned whose voice to follow. If this message spoke to you today, I want you to make one simple declaration. Write in the comments, "Lord, your voice is greater than my fear." Not because typing those words will magically remove every anxious thought, but because today you are making a decision. Fear will no longer be the loudest voice in your life. My child, your mind was never created to carry every burden. It was created to know me, to trust me, to rest in me. So tonight, when fear begins speaking again, remember this: you don't have to fight your mind alone, because I have never stopped fighting for you, and I never will. Amen.